What's up, everybody? This is Chris Rodrigo. Another edition of the Car Concierge Show, the show that helps with the buying, selling, maintaining, and repairing of your vehicle. On today's show, we're going to head, or pretty much stay in California, and check out a new fight that's brewing between Gavin Newsom and the CEO of GM, Mary Barra. We're also going to check out the latest recall from Ford as they continue to have one of the worst years imaginable when it comes to recalls. And last but not least, we're going to check out a story about a situation where a couple of young kids were doing some of those TikTok challenges and people end up getting hurt. And now those children are being charged for those problems. All right, so let's jump straight in. We're going to, jump into a little political stuff for a second. We're going to check out Gavin Newsom and read the story where he is upset with GM CEO Mary Barra because she's not backing him when it comes to the California EV credits and all of those such things. So let's check out this story real quickly and keep it moving. All right, so this is Yahoo Autos. Gavin Newsom bails on a California EV credit, has choice words for GM CEO Mary Barra. Make my thing a little small. Let's see this cat. All right, there we go. This is from Matthew DeBoard, and this is from Tuesday, September 23rd. These are days of the vanishing federal EV tax credit. The $7,500 incentive, which has driven growth in the U.S. EV market, is going away at the end of the month. Now buyers in California are going to see the state government step in with its own version from Bloomberg. Bloomberg explained that the sticking point is a persistent budget deficit in California. Newsweek puts it at 17 to 25 billion every year moving forward, and also notes that the state is losing 16 billion in federal money. Newsom is clearly not happy about the whole situation and sniped at GM CEO Mary Barra over the company's lack of support in the transition. Although it had scheduled to ban gas-burning vehicles by 2035, this was recently undermined by Congress. According to Newsom, Barra sold us out. County of California bailing on EV credits is a representative of a larger trend. This whole fracas does bring up the question of how long EV incentives should last. While tax credits certainly had a role to play when the market was starting out, should we keep them going even as EV sales start to seriously displace those of gas vehicles, and there are more companies than Tesla vying for customers? Proponents would say yes and add that incentives are more important now than ever as EV market growth slows and automakers reassess their once ambitious plans. It's also not like gas cars don't benefit from their own somewhat hidden subsidies. I've often pointed out that the federal gas tax hasn't been raised since the early 1990s, which is a very big break for big oil. You also have to consider how the federal EV tax credit might have distorted the market, and even as it was enabling it to expand, for most of its history, it was a credit that could be claimed only if you made enough money to owe something to the IRS. This bent its advantages toward affluent buyers, many of who lived in California. Newsom chose to prioritize budget deficits over EV incentives. Governor Newsom's reaction is understandable, as every attack on California is a chance for him to oppose the Trump administration ahead of a potential run for president in 2028. He perhaps didn't need to dismiss Mary Barra, a consummate diplomat CEO who has carefully calibrated the general's relationship with the White House for years, yet he might be in an awkward position as governor for the country's largest EV state at a time when the EV market in the U.S. is slowing down. His constituents want their electric cars and their incentives, yet nationally, the future of EVs is unclear. Newsom knows California's huge deficits could be a political liability. Newsom might have calculated that apart from issuing some strong words, this wasn't something to take a stand on. California represents almost 30% of EV sales in the U.S., so the EV market in the state is sufficiently robust to survive and grow without incentives. Continuing to bolster it by replacing a federal credit at a time when the budget is under considerable stress is a highly questionable tactic. California, to be blunt, needs revenue more than it needs additional EVs on the road. So true, so true. I cannot disagree more. Or agree more. Sorry. So, what are we talking about? Gavin Newsom is upset with GM because they have taken a stance that they don't believe that the EV credit should continue. They don't believe that, and was of course always my biggest sticking point is they don't believe that. Why is you only giving incentives to people who are buying EVs? There are lots of people out there who need to buy cars and just don't have the taste or the financial stability, because that's a big thing about these EV vehicles. You have to be I'm honestly always saying you have to be at the very least steady in your life and doing fairly well to own an EV. Now, that's not true in all cases. Some of these newer EVs, these Hyundai Ioniqs, they seem to be fairly priced. People are picking those up left and right. And it does seem like there are a lot of people who are not rich are getting into these EV vehicles. But standardly, particularly for Teslas, most people who drive Teslas are doing fairly well for themselves. And we understand that California is a big EV market. And it's because it's California. You don't have to worry about, the situations of, the snow and cold weather, as it were, because a lot of the problems that EVs are having, back east or in areas that have considerable weather change is that these EVs are conking out, due to the weather. And California doesn't, standardly have that problem. The weather allows for you to have an EV and not worry about it getting, doors getting frozen or it not starting because, the part of the battery got too cold. And, so I do understand that why Gavin Newsom is upset at Mary Barr if she is not continuing to throw her support behind the EV tax credit and the bolstering of the EV market and changing California over to a state that is only has EV vehicles on the road by 2035, which was it's just got to be one of the stupidest ideas I've ever heard. I can't believe that you would even think that by what is that in roughly 10 years, the idea is that every person in California is going to be driving an EV is crazy. I mean, if memory serves me correctly, those numbers kept on changing from 2035 to 2029. It was just some outlandish year that definitely wasn't going to happen. People, first off, there's a lot of people who just don't like EVs. That's the bottom line. There's a lot of people who don't like EVs, and they're going to still be around by 2035. So, and they don't have any plans whatsoever to buy an EV. And you're not going to be able to force people to, buy these EV vehicles. And I understand, the idea that you're trying to just keep, California clean, and you have this idea that gas-powered vehicles are, polluting the air and all these other things. But it's been proven, over the course of time that EVs are just as bad as gas-powered vehicles to some extent when it comes to, pollution and all these other types of things. So, bottom line is nobody care what Gavin Newsom think. I'm still siding with Mary Barr. She's been a great CEO for GM. She's done great things. She's been a great diplomat CEO, like they said. So she just, working what is best for the company, no matter who's in office. And that's what you really have to do. Gavin Newsom's stick is more about sticking it to Trump than anything else. So anything that has any inclination to support Trump, he is going to be against. And in this case, it was Mary Barr. And, of course, the EV tax credits that he's getting rid of at the end of this month. All right, let's keep it going. Next up, of course, we're going to hit our recall watch. And as standard, it is going to be Ford again. In here with another recall. And it sounds like a serious recall, so let's check it out and keep it going.
Welcome to Recall Alert. Ford is recalling more than 115,000 Super Duty trucks in the United States because of a steering column defect. The upper steering shaft may separate, creating a risk of losing control of the vehicle. The recall covers 2020 and 2021 Ford F-250, F-350, and F-450 Super Duty models, built between February 2019 and September 2020. Ford dealers will inspect the steering shaft. If it passes, they'll reinforce it. If it fails, they'll replace it completely, all at no cost to owners. Dealer notices have already gone out, with owner letters arriving in October. Final repair instructions will follow in December. If you own one of these trucks, check your VIN on Ford's recall website or the NHTSA recall tool, and schedule repairs as soon as you're notified. Stay safe, and that's today's recall alert.
All right, so I really do not want to go on my big old horrible spiel about recalls again, but this is a fairly serious recall. I don't think they specify what year of heavy duty it was that is having this problem. Oh, let me see. So it doesn't specify exactly what year that is having this problem. So I'm going to jump off a cliff and say it's this latest year. And if that is the truth, then we're talking about a steering column defect that is from the factory, which means that it's a problem that could happen at any time, which means for us that is a situation where you want to be driving this thing around. You want to go straight to your dealership. You want to hit them up and be like, hey, I might have this recall. And they talking about that. They don't want to have the real, the letters are going out now, which means that, they're notifying you, but dollars to donuts, they don't have the fix yet. They're figuring it out, probably deciding on if they can just repair it or if it's a necessary part. And then they're going to hit you in December with, hey, let's get it fixed. So most people who have these vehicles are using them for work trucks. So, and I had one in my shop right now that I think about it who was in an accident, and he said the steering went out. Now that I'm running over the whole statement that he said, I'm kind of wondering if it was related to this accident or this recall, because it has similar functions. His steering wheel column detached. We found that it was detached, but he thought it was detached because of the accident he's in, because it smashed up the whole front end of the vehicle. So neither here nor there, but it's just what we're always saying. I mean, this is definitely something you would think that somebody would establish over the course of a certain type of research and development. Particularly, one of my favorite things to do in research and development is take a brand new vehicle and drive it across country. I'm telling you, it was one of the greatest research and development tools that they ever used. Two people in the car, pay them for the whole time. They don't drive all day. They spend nights at hotels, so they have it. It's like a vacation. It really truly is. It's like a vacation for whoever the driver is. And standardly, they don't get paid very much, but they, get paid decently for just driving this car. In most cases, back then, from Michigan to Texas, sometimes Michigan to over to California in some cases, but it's just a certain type of research and development that is not being done on these vehicles. And we understand why. These automakers have to get these vehicles out immediately to, to please the public, to compete against other automakers who are putting out newer vehicles as just as fast with all the new bells and whistles. So it's just a competition that is hurting the manufacturer of these vehicles, and eventually what it's going to do is going to start hurting the consumer, and that's what we need to avoid. All right, guys, last story. This story, I'm going to say, is one that you could fairly see coming, because with the advent of social media and the advent of TikTok and Instagram, and all these other sites where not only people can, make good money just talking, you can make good money doing stupid stuff. And that's what we're running into nowadays, where there's a lot of people still, or not still, but doing really silly things in the name of, you know, you know, going viral, as it were. So, let's check out a story about how some teens were doing a TikTok challenge, and some people got hurt to the point where, some had to be charged. Let's check it out.
Dangerous stunts meant to capture your attention, but these so-called TikTok challenges have led to devastating results and criminal charges against a pair of local teenagers. Good evening, everyone. I'm Yuki Washington. Those charges stem from separate incidents, and tonight, as Nikki Dementri reports, prosecutors in Northampton County are hoping these cases serve as a warning to other teenagers that actions have consequences.
It's social media stunts like this that the Northampton County District Attorney is hoping to stop. This is table surfing, where someone sits on a flipped over folding table while being pulled by a car. That's part of the reason he announced charges Tuesday against a 17-year-old boy and then a 19-year-old woman after challenges he says they participated in went very wrong.
These charges were not designed to stigmatize either the victims or the families.
The first case happened here at the Park and Ride in Bethlehem Township in March. A 20-year-old woman fell off the trunk of a moving car doing a so-called car surfing challenge. She's still recovering from, quote, catastrophic head injuries. Meanwhile, the 19-year-old driver of that car was charged with aggravated assault, among other offenses. Then in June, a 17-year-old Freedom High schooler died, investigators say, when the folding table he was riding slammed into a parked vehicle. That teenage driver was recently charged with involuntary manslaughter.
These people involved in this weren't planning on injuring anybody, so they weren't thinking like criminals. They thought it was going to be a good time to risk death or serious danger.
That's truly sad, and it's one of those things where they had no idea that somebody was going to die while they were doing this, that somebody was going to get charged criminally because of this, and it's just one of those things where we've reached a point in the world where not let's face it. We've all, as teenagers or young people, we did silly stuff. We did crazy stuff. We did stuff that, in some cases, might have threatened our lives. But these young people are doing it for the TikToks, for the Instagrams and the YouTubes or the X's or whatever it may be. And it's a situation where not only are they going to get the likes and the views, but they could, get financial gain. And that's what's going to elevate this situation to the point where it's going to be a true problem, because the idea that you can get the likes and the fame and go viral, and not on top of that make some money from it, is going to cause people to continue to do this until something really happens. So I kind of understand why he's trying to do this, but let's finish this story.
Injury, and it constituted criminally culpable behaviors.
The DA says they've spoken with the victims' families several times. He's not seeking prison time for either defendant.
I promise these families that in return for the admission by these drivers that they engage in this criminally reckless behavior, there will be public accountability, and that after a successful completion of a period of supervision, these defendants will have the opportunity to ask that their criminal charges be expunged.
The district attorney notes that the victims' families, they struggled with all of this. Why? Well, the defendants, he says, were dear friends of their children. That being said, though, the district attorney says actions have consequences, and he's hoping that these charges deter anyone else from doing something like this. In Easton, Nikki Dementri, CBS News, Philadelphia.
Yeah, I think that, that's pretty much, that district attorney's full point is trying to make sure that not only the people over in Philadelphia, but the world to understand that these acts and these type of things have consequences. Not only the death of your friend or the injury to another friend, but criminal cases, criminal charges. I would say that I would not have publicly said that, that he's going to go easy on these children. But I understand why, because they definitely didn't mean for this to happen. They didn't mean for their friends to die, their friends to get injured. They did not mean for this to happen. So I understand him giving them some leeway or some grace, but I would not have said that. I would have adamantly made it clear that these incidents are horrible and they're bad and people could die and people could get hurt and that you're going to face rough consequences. And just giving out the idea or the statement that you're going to face rough consequences for this, you would hope that that would deter other people from trying it out, trying to make these TikTok challenges or do these crazy things that could put their lives in jeopardy. And then that's pretty much what he's doing, and I totally understand. I'm completely with it. I totally agree with this district attorney that we have to. He has to file these charges and go through this whole process, not only to hold those people who did this accountable, but to put it out there that people could die from this, people could get hurt from this, and you have to understand this before you start. You decide that you and your friend are going to go out and commit these acts, criminal or otherwise, that could hurt somebody. And like I was saying before, this is going to, as much as he is trying and as much as this is a great idea and a great attempt at his part to levy some knowledge to people that you get hurt from this and that you could die from these incidents, is that it's going to be hard to reach these people. Because let's face it, there are people who are making their living off of TikTok, making their living off of X and Instagram, I guess to some degree, and making their living off of doing these acts, acting crazy, doing silly and outrageous things and recording it and putting it on their TikToks and their lives and their Instagrams, and that's their life. So for those people, it's going to be extremely hard for situations like this to touch them or to convey a certain message to them that they shouldn't be doing these things, because it is their life. It is their livelihood to some degree. So, once again, shout out to that district attorney. This is a great thing that he did, trying to put it out there that these TikTok challenges really could hurt you teenagers. You could lose your life. Your friends could lose their lives. You could get hurt. Your friends could get hurt. And that's the major overringing note that he wants to get out there, and that I want to get out there to you, that it's I applaud you for finding a way to become financially stable doing TikTok videos, but just do some that's not going to risk you or your friends' lives. Alright guys, I'm going to let y'all get up out of here. I am Chris Surratt. Please hit the like, share, subscribe button. Hit me in the DMs if you have any questions, concerns, or show ideas. And I'm out. Peace.